Jessa Vance laughed at the stranger's joke in line at the coffee shop, not realizing that single moment would change her entire life. It wasn't even that funny of a joke. Something about a squirrel trying to return a latte. But the way he said it so dry, so unexpectedly deadpan caught her off guard. She glanced up from her phone, let out a laugh so bright it made the guy in front of her look twice. His eyes went wide for a second like he hadn't expected her to respond. "Wow," the man said, blinking. "I usually get eye rolls, not actual laughter." "That just boosted my ego for the week," Jessa grinned. "Well, I'm a sucker for bad animal jokes. Then I've got a whole arsenal," he said, stepping forward with her as the line moved. "I'm Logan Briggs, Jessa," she replied. "Please tell me you're not one of those people who orders a triple half-calf oat milk with a twist of orange or something." He gave her a look. "Absolutely not. Straight black coffee, 2 sugars. I'm a simple man." "Respect," she said, nodding. They kept talking as the line inched forward. He was funny in a quiet way, not trying too hard. He asked about her job, graphic designer at a local ad agency, and she asked if he worked nearby. "Sort of," he said vaguely. "I bounce between a few places." Jessa didn't press. She figured he was some kind of freelancer or maybe in tech. He didn't offer more, and she didn't care enough to dig. He seemed normal, grounded. No weird flexes or flashy watches. Just a guy in jeans and a navy Henley who made her laugh at 8 in the morning. When it was her turn to order, she reached for her wallet, but Logan was already handing his card to the cashier. "Hey," she started to protest, but he waved her off. "Call it payment for the laugh," he said. Jessa hesitated, then smiled. "All right. But next time I'm buying." Logan's eyes flickered with something surprise, amusement, before he said, "I'll hold you to that." They stepped aside to wait for their drinks, and she expected the conversation to die out there, but it didn't. He asked about her favorite movies, her least favorite font, papyrus, she said immediately, and he looked impressed. "And if she'd ever tried the cinnamon roll from this place, it'll change your life," he said seriously. By the time their coffees were ready, Jessa felt like she'd known him for longer than 10 minutes. She didn't usually give out her number, but something about Logan felt different. As they stepped outside, he handed her a napkin. "Here," he said. "In case you need to write something down." She glanced at him, then laughed again as she took it. "Smooth. Worked, didn't it?" She scribbled her number and handed it back. "Text me if you ever want to hear more squirrel jokes." He nodded, a genuine smile tugging at his mouth. "You'll regret saying that." Jessa walked away feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Logan didn't text right away. In fact, 3 days passed. Jessa figured he'd forgotten or lost the napkin or maybe had a girlfriend and was just being nice. Whatever. It wasn't like she was holding her breath. Then, on the 4th day, she saw him again. She was walking through Midtown, balancing a box of printed proofs when she heard a voice say, "Either you're stalking me, or fate really wants us to talk about squirrels again." She looked up, and there he was, standing outside the lobby of one of the sleeker office buildings. His hair was slightly mussed, and he was wearing a fitted gray blazer over a black shirt, looking far too good for someone she assumed was a freelance whatever. "Hey," she said, surprised. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "I didn't forget," he said. "I just got pulled into some things." "Like what?" she asked. He hesitated. "Work, meetings, the usual, but you're here now, so dinner." She blinked. "Dinner?" "Yeah, you said next time you're buying. I'm just trying to collect." She tilted her head. "I meant coffee." "I heard dinner," he said, eyes twinkling. Jessa laughed. "You're something else." "Is that a yes?" She nodded. "Okay, one dinner, but I pick the place." "Deal," he said. She chose a cozy Italian bistro near her apartment, nothing fancy. Just warm lighting, handmade pasta, and ridiculously good bread. But when she walked in, Logan was already at a table, button-up shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled up, a bottle of wine breathing beside him like he did this often. "You clean up nice," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "You say that like I'm usually a mess." "Well, you didn't exactly scream fine dining at the coffee shop." He leaned in. "Good, I like being underestimated." They talked for hours about music, childhood, her love for drawing as a kid, his travels. He still didn't say much about his job, but when she asked what he did, he just said, "I work with companies, help them grow." Vague, but she didn't push. By the time dessert came, Jessa realized she hadn't stopped smiling all night. Okay, she said, setting down her fork. What's the catch? He raised a brow. Catch? You're funny, smart, not a serial killer, I assume. What's the flaw? He tilted his head. I bite my nails when I'm anxious. I hate cilantro. I'm terrible at replying to emails. And I might be slightly addicted to buying books I never read. She stared at him, amused. So you're human, noted. He looked at her for a beat too long, then he said quietly, You know what I think? What? I think you're going to ruin me. Jessa blinked. What? He sat back, smiling to himself. Nothing, just a feeling. A week later, she found herself in the back of a black car, being driven across the city to meet Logan for another date. He told her to dress up, but didn't say where they were going. When she stepped out, she froze. It was a rooftop restaurant with string lights, a view of the skyline, and a private table set with candles and champagne. What is this? She asked, breathless. Logan appeared beside her, dressed in a tailored suit. He held out his hand. A promise. She took it, heart pounding. A promise of what? He looked at her like he already knew. Something real. And Jessa, for the first time in a long time, let herself believe him. Jessa stepped into the narrow elevator, her heels clicking softly against the floor as she ascended to the penthouse suite of the Langston. The doorman had greeted her by name when she arrived, which was confusing enough, but the concierge had personally walked her to the elevator and pressed the button for her, as if she were royalty. She stared at the mirrored walls, trying not to fidget with her dress. Logan hadn't mentioned anything about this place. He'd only said, Come hungry and trust me. The doors opened with a quiet chime. She stepped out into warm amber light and hushed music. Logan stood at the far end of the room, next to a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the entire city. The sky behind him was a deep indigo, and the lights of Manhattan glittered like a sea of stars. You're early, he said as she approached. I like that. I thought I was late, she said, breath catching at the sight of him in a dark vest and open-collared shirt, and I didn't know we were. Doing this? He walked toward her, his expression unreadable. This isn't about impressing you, it's about giving you one night where you don't have to think about anything. No work, no rent, just this. She glanced around. A private chef was plating dishes at a long counter. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The entire suite felt like something out of a dream. This feels illegal, she muttered. He chuckled. It's not, it's just underused. Jessa narrowed her eyes. Wait, you said you work with companies, help them grow. What does that mean exactly? Logan's gaze lingered on her for a moment. Then he gestured toward the table set for two. Let's sit, I'll tell you. She sat, trying to ignore the way her pulse jumped when he pulled her chair out for her. A server poured chilled wine into delicate glasses before stepping back silently. I started buying small businesses in college, Logan said. Fixing what was broken, selling them or keeping them if they were worth it. It grew faster than I expected. Now I run a portfolio of companies across real estate, tech, manufacturing, and a few non-traditional sectors. Jessa blinked. So you're not just successful, you're wealthy. Logan didn't flinch. Yes, like significantly. Very, she stared at him. Then why didn't you say anything before? Because I've seen what happens when I lead with that. People change. They act like I'm an ATM or a prize. You didn't, I liked that. Jessa leaned back, processing. So the rooftop dinner, the car. All of this is normal for you. It's not about what's normal for me, Logan said. It's about what matters to you. Her gaze met his. You don't know what matters to me. I'm trying to learn. The first course arrived, something delicate and artfully arranged on a porcelain plate. Jessa barely noticed it. Her thoughts were spinning. I'm not used to this, she said softly. I mean, I've dated guys who thought 2 for 1 appetizers counted as effort. I'm not trying to impress you with money, Logan said. I'm trying to give you something real. Something you'll remember. Why? She asked. Why me? He hesitated, then looked at her with something raw behind his eyes. Because when you laughed at my terrible joke, you looked at me like I was just some guy in line, not a name, not a net worth, just a person. Jessa's throat tightened. So what now? You wine and dine me until I forget I live in a 6th floor walk-up with a leaky ceiling. Logan rested his elbows on the table, leaning in. You live in a sixth-floor walk-up and still show up looking like that. You don't need to forget where you came from. I just want a chance to be part of where you're going. She didn't answer right away. The intensity in his voice made her chest ache in a way she hadn't felt in a long time, not just attraction, something deeper, something terrifying. Okay, she said finally, but you're paying for dessert. No arguments, his smile softened. Deal. After dinner, he didn't take her home. Instead, they walked, hand in hand through quiet streets past shuttered storefronts and glowing lampposts. It was late, and the city had thinned out, leaving only the hum of distant traffic and the occasional cab sweeping by. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they crossed a pedestrian bridge. "Anything? What's the worst thing you've ever done with all that money?" Logan laughed under his breath. "I bought a racehorse once, named it after a girl who ghosted me. It lost every race." Jessa grinned. "Sounds like karma." "Oh, definitely, I deserved it." She hesitated. "And the best thing," he fell quiet for a moment. "Last year, one of the factories I own was going under. Instead of shutting it down, I made it employee-owned, gave them all a stake. It turned around in 6 months. They send me Christmas cards now." She looked at him, surprised. "You don't lead with that either," he shook his head. "I don't lead with anything. I just want to be seen." They stopped at the edge of a fountain, the water glowing under soft lights. Jessa turned toward him, heart pounding. "What do you see when you look at me?" she asked. Logan didn't hesitate. "Someone who doesn't need me, but I want her to want me anyway." She stepped closer. "And if I don't, then I'll still be grateful you smiled at me in line." His voice cracked just slightly on the last word, and that did it. Jessa reached up, touched his face, and kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't careful. It was the kind of kiss that rewrote everything. When she pulled back, breathless, Logan rested his forehead against hers. "I'm in trouble," he whispered. Jessa smiled. "You really are." Neither of them spoke again for a long time, not because there was nothing left to say, but because, for once, silence said enough. Rain streaked across the glass as Jessa stood inside her apartment, staring at the envelope in her hand. It had arrived earlier that morning, delivered by a uniformed courier who didn't explain a thing, just handed it to her with a nod and walked away. Her name was written on the front in bold, elegant penmanship. She hadn't opened it. Not yet. She already knew who it was from. Logan had been distant since that night, not cold but quieter, the kind of quiet that made her stomach twist. He still called, still made her laugh. But there was something behind his eyes now, a shadow she couldn't name, and he hadn't invited her to his world again, not since the rooftop. She finally peeled the flap open. Inside was a single folded card. Heavy cardstock, dark navy. Her fingertips tingled as she opened it. It was an invitation to the Hartwell Foundation Gala, black tie, formal, Saturday night. And at the bottom, scrawled in that same bold writing, "Come see the truth." Jessa stared at it for a long time before setting it carefully on the counter. She didn't own anything even close to suitable, but she knew someone who could help. Her neighbor, Clarissa, was a stylist for Broadway performers and had a closet that made department stores look underdressed. When Jessa explained the situation, Clarissa didn't ask questions. She just pushed racks of gowns toward her and said, "Try until you feel like you belong in the room." That's how, 2 nights later, Jessa found herself stepping out of a town car in front of the Astoria Grand Ballroom, wearing a floor-length black silk gown with a plunging back and a slit that whispered danger. Her hair was swept up, her heels clicked like confidence. The moment she stepped through the grand marble entryway, she understood why Logan had said, "Come see the truth." This wasn't just a fundraiser, this was an unveiling. Chandeliers glowed overhead. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns sipped champagne as servers floated by with silver trays. A quartet played something soft and expensive. The walls were lined with art, the kind she'd only seen in magazines. Everything gleamed, and then she saw him. Logan stood on the far end of the room, talking to a man who looked like he ran a nation. He wore a midnight black tuxedo that fit like it had been sewn straight onto his body. His expression was unreadable, his posture impeccable. Every inch of him radiated control. Jessa suddenly felt like she'd walked into a movie she didn't belong in. He turned, as if sensing her, and their eyes locked. He excused himself from the conversation and crossed the room toward her, each step measured and deliberate. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, stopping inches away. "You invited me," she answered, voice steady despite the way her pulse roared. "I didn't know if you'd want to see this side." "I don't know what I want to see yet," she said, scanning the room. "What exactly is this?" He gestured subtly. "This is the world I was born into. My father built Hartwell Industries. I took it over when I was 23. The foundation is how I try to balance the scales. You could have just said that. I needed you to see it, all of it, so you'd know what you're really walking into." She met his gaze. "And what if I decide I don't want to walk into it?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Then I'll understand, but I won't pretend it wouldn't destroy me." Before she could respond, a woman approached, tall, statuesque, wearing a gown that looked like it belonged on a red carpet. She laid a hand on Logan's arm and smiled like she'd done it 100 times. "Logan, darling, you disappeared on me." Jessa froze. Logan's face didn't change. "Jessa, this is Elena. She used to work with the foundation." Elena turned her attention to Jessa with a practiced smile. "How charming." "And you are someone who wasn't invited by you," Jessa said before she could stop herself. Elena let out a light laugh, but her eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Well, Logan's always had eclectic taste." Logan stepped between them. "I need a moment, Elena." She arched a brow, then glided away. Jessa looked at him. "Is that what I am? Eclectic?" "No," he said sharply. "You're the only thing in this room that feels real." She didn't answer. She turned and walked toward the balcony, needing air. The city stretched out below, glittering and endless. She gripped the railing, her mind spinning. Logan joined her a moment later, silent at first. "She's nothing," he said finally. "Just a ghost from a life I left behind." "I didn't ask," Jessa said, eyes still on the skyline, "but you thought it." She turned toward him. "You've been holding back." "Since that night," he nodded once, "because I felt something I wasn't ready for. And now, I'm terrified," he said simply, "because I've built everything on control, strategy, knowing the next move, but with you, I don't have a map." She stepped closer. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe this doesn't need a map." He looked at her like she was rewriting the laws of gravity. "Then tell me what it needs." She reached up, touched the edge of his jacket. "Honesty, no more illusions, no more curated rooftop nights, just you." He leaned in until their foreheads almost touched. "You have me, as I am, no edits." A sharp chime rang from inside. The auction was beginning. Logan didn't move. "I donated something," he said quietly. "A property, lakefront. I was going to turn it into a luxury retreat. But now I think it should be something else." "What?" "A space for artists, creatives, people who see the world like you do." Jessa blinked, stunned. "Why?" "Because you reminded me it's not always about profit. Sometimes it's about beauty." Her voice caught. "You did all that because of me?" "I'd rebuild the world if it meant keeping that look in your eyes." She looked up at him. "Then stop running." "I'm not," he said. "Not anymore." He pulled her into a slow, quiet kiss, one that felt like a promise made without words. When they stepped back inside, the room was still electric with wealth and power. But Jessa no longer felt like she didn't belong. She walked beside Logan, not behind him. And for the first time, she wasn't wondering where this was going. She already knew. Jessa stood in front of the mirror in her tiny bathroom, brushing her teeth with one hand and trying to zip up the side of her dress with the other. It wasn't glamorous. The faucet still leaked and the light flickered every now and then, but the reflection staring back at her looked different. Not because of the makeup or the heels or the barely zipped dress, but because of the certainty in her eyes. 2 weeks had passed since the gala, since the balcony. Since that kiss that didn't feel like a beginning or an ending, it felt like a vow. She hadn't seen Logan since then, not in person. He'd called, but not to make plans. He was traveling for business, he said, but his voice had been less guarded, more open. He asked about her projects, her deadlines, her neighbor's cat that liked to sit on her window ledge. He listened in a way that made her feel not just heard, but remembered. Tonight, she wasn't dressing up for him. Not exactly. Her ad agency had landed a last-minute pitch meeting with a boutique hotel group, and her boss had insisted Jessa present the branding concepts herself. It was the kind of opportunity she'd been waiting for since graduation. She'd worked through the night, sketched until her fingers cramped. She was ready, so when she stepped into the boardroom that morning with her tablet, her presentation deck, and a black blazer she'd borrowed from Clarissa, she was focused. Steady until she saw him. Logan sat at the far end of the table. No tuxedo, no rooftop backdrop, just a navy sport coat, a blank notepad, and a fountain pen. He didn't look surprised to see her. Jessa stopped mid-step. "What are you doing here?" The man next to him, a vaguely familiar executive with a slick ponytail, answered before Logan could. "Mr. Briggs is the majority investor in the group. He's here for oversight." Jessa turned to Logan. "You didn't say anything." "I didn't want you to alter your pitch," he said, voice calm. "I wanted to see what you'd bring if you had no idea I was watching." She narrowed her eyes. "You couldn't just wait until after to tell me. I wanted the truth," he said. "The real you?" Jessa stared at him, her jaw tight. Then she nodded once and turned to the screen. "Fine, let's get started." The presentation lasted 20 minutes. She didn't stumble, didn't soften. She walked them through color theory, spatial flow, psychological impact, everything she'd poured into the campaign. Her voice never shook. When she finished, there was a beat of silence. Then Logan leaned back in his chair and said, "Approve it, full rollout." "No revisions." The ponytail executive looked baffled. "We haven't, I've seen enough," Logan said, gaze still locked on her. "She understands exactly what the property needs." Jessa's throat went dry. She looked at him, trying to read his expression. "Congratulations," he said. "You just landed your biggest client." Afterward, he waited for her in the hallway. "I wasn't trying to trap you," he said the moment she stepped out. "You ambushed me in a boardroom." "I needed to know if what I felt was real," he said. "If you'd still shine when you didn't think I was watching." She folded her arms. "And you blinded me." She didn't want to smile, but the corners of her mouth betrayed her. "You're still ridiculous." "I'm serious," he said. "I've never felt this certain about anything. You've known me a month. And I've built companies in less time," he said, "but I never cared this much about the outcome." She studied him. "Why me?" He stepped closer. "Because you make me feel like I'm not just a man with a bank account. You make me feel like I have a soul." Jessa inhaled sharply. "You're just saying that. I'm not. I've spent years surrounded by people who say yes to me, who pretend to care. You grilled me at dinner. You kissed me on a balcony, then disappeared when I got too quiet. You make me want to be better." She tried to look away, but his hand gently touched her elbow. "I bought a building last week," he said. "It's got a ground floor space, perfect for a creative studio, skylights, exposed brick downtown location." "Logan, I'm not giving it to you," he cut in. "I'm offering it, lease, terms you set, no favors, no strings, just a chance to build something that's yours." She stared at him, stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because you asked me for honesty," he said. "And the truth is, I'm in love with you." The words hit her like a wave. She'd been bracing for them, but hearing them out loud made her chest ache in a way she hadn't expected. "You can't be," she whispered. "It's too fast." "No," he said. "It's just fast enough. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm just asking for a chance to be in it." She looked at him. Really looked, not the suit, not the money, just the man who made her laugh in line over a squirrel joke. The man who watched her present like she was the only one in the room. The man who offered her space, not control. "I don't want a penthouse," she said. "I don't want private chefs or gala invitations or champagne under chandeliers. Okay. I want someone who'll bring me soup when I'm sick, who'll let me sketch at 2 in the morning without complaining. Who'll remind me I'm not crazy when I cry over fonts." He smiled, eyes softening. "I can do soup." She took a breath. Then yes, his brows lifted. "Yes, yes to your offer, yes to the studio, yes to everything, but only if we do it our way." He reached for her hand. "Always." They stepped outside into the afternoon sun, the city humming around them. No rooftop, no orchestra, just pavement, traffic, and the quiet hum of something real. She squeezed his hand. He looked over. "What? You're not the only one who's terrified," she said. "I've never let anyone in like this." He kissed her knuckles. "Then let's be terrified together." They walked down the street side by side, the world still chaotic and loud, but for the first time it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt like home. And when she laughed at something, he said a joke about a pigeon with a business card, he looked at her like he'd just won the universe. Because in his eyes, he had. Jessa exhaled slowly as she stepped into the raw, open space that would soon be her studio. The scent of sawdust hung in the air, and the faint echo of footsteps bounced off the exposed brick walls. Sunlight poured in from the skylights above, casting long, golden strips across the unfinished floor. It was quiet, peaceful in a way that felt rare in the city. Logan stood near the far window, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a clipboard in his hand as he spoke with the contractor. He was pointing to the far wall, something about custom shelving and electrical outlets. He looked completely in his element, but when he caught sight of her, he stopped mid-sentence. "You're here early," he said, crossing the room toward her. "I couldn't stay away," she replied, running her hand along the cool brick. "This already feels like mine." "It is," he said. "Every inch of it." A pause hung between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of something weighty and unspoken. "I've been thinking," she said, turning toward him, "about what it means to have someone believe in you before the world does." He tilted his head. "You've had that all along. You just didn't let anyone close enough to prove it." She smiled softly. "Maybe, but I've never had someone choose to believe in me when there was nothing in it for them." "There's everything in it for me," Logan said, "because when you believe in someone, you don't measure the return. You just do it because you know it matters." She reached out and touched the edge of his cuff. "You've changed, so have you?" "Not really," she said. "I think I just stopped hiding." "From what?" "From feeling like I wasn't enough for something like this." "For someone like you." Logan's eyes searched hers. "Then let me be clear, you're not just enough, you're everything I didn't know I needed." She looked down, overwhelmed. "You're good with words." "No," he said, lifting her chin gently. "I'm just honest with you." As if on cue, the contractor called his name again, and Logan gave her an apologetic glance before walking back across the room. Jessa wandered toward the opposite wall, where the light was strongest. She could already picture the layout: her drafting table by the window, a gallery wall for inspiration, shelving for supplies. It would be her sanctuary. Later that night, they returned to her apartment, not because it was convenient or because it was close to the studio, but because it was home. The air conditioner rattled in the window, and the floor creaked in all the usual places, but they didn't care. They curled up on the couch with takeout containers balanced on mismatched plates, a documentary playing in the background. "I have something to ask you," Logan said, setting his food aside. Jessa raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to propose, are you?" "No," he said, laughing. "Not yet." "Good. Because I'm still getting used to having a sink that backs up whenever I run the dishwasher." "I want you to come with me next weekend," he said. "It's not business, it's not a fancy event, just something I want to share." "Where?" "My lake house. It's quiet, peaceful, no staff, no suits. Just trees, water, and time." She hesitated. "You're sure?" "I'm not sure of anything except this. I want you there." She nodded. "Then I'm in." The lake house sat on a private stretch of shoreline, nestled between tall pines and thick oaks. The air smelled like cedar and moss, and the water gleamed under the afternoon sun. Jessa kicked off her sneakers the moment they arrived and ran straight to the edge of the dock, toes curling over the wood. "I didn't know it could be this quiet," she murmured. "That's why I come here," Logan said, standing behind her, "to remember what stillness feels like." They spent the afternoon in the shallows, their legs dangling off the dock, laughing about everything and nothing. He cooked for her that night grilled vegetables, pan-seared fish, and a bottle of wine he opened with too much confidence and not enough skill. "It's probably a crime to destroy a vintage like that," she teased as he wiped wine off the counter. "It's a crime no one taught me how to use a corkscrew properly," he muttered. They danced barefoot in the living room afterward, no music, just the rhythm of their breathing and the creak of the wooden floorboards. "I could live like this," she whispered against his shoulder. "You could have this," Logan said, "all of it, anytime you want. But would it still feel special?" He leaned back to meet her gaze. "Yes, because you're what makes it special." The next morning, they sat on the porch as mist rolled off the lake, coffee mugs warming their hands. "I used to think love was about grand gestures," Jessa said, "like fireworks or dramatic speeches." "That sounds exhausting," Logan replied. She laughed. "It is, but this is different. This is real." He took her hand. No more pretending, no more waiting, I love you. And I want to build a life with you, not just a fantasy, she nodded. Then let's build it. They returned to the city a few days later, not as two people figuring things out, but as partners. The studio opened that fall, and her first show sold out in a week. Logan stayed behind the scenes, always letting her shine. He never tried to shape her success, only to support it. Their lives blended slowly and deliberately. Her artwork began appearing in hotel lobbies he owned, but only after she approved every placement. They traveled, but not for attention, just to live, to explore, to breathe. On a rainy winter evening, while cooking in the kitchen of their new shared apartment, a wide loft space with paint-speckled floors and sun-washed windows, Logan burned the garlic and proposed with a ring he'd kept hidden in the flour jar. Jessa dropped a spoon in shock. "I thought you said not yet," he shrugged, eyes hopeful. "I changed my mind, I don't want to wait anymore." She stepped toward him, wet hands and all, and whispered, "Then yes." They married in the spring under a canopy of trees at the lake house. Just family, close friends, and the sound of birdsong in the distance. No spectacle, no press, just vows written in private and spoken in truth. And in that quiet, perfect moment, they began not a new chapter but a life, one rooted in love, in freedom, in choice, and in each other.